What's good, Whisper Nation? It is Monday, July 12th. You know that's another mock draft coming your way. This time it's a 12-team PPR Superflex, and we are very excited to be joined by Pro Football Focus's Ian Hartitz coming your way right now. Let's do it.
Right here.
The aforementioned guest. How's it going, Ian?
Appreciate you guys having me on, getting some more of these mock drafts fired up. I'm happy. It seems like, the entire industry is really starting to hit our stride here in early July. I've been doing some best balls since, March or so. So I feel like I'm pretty well versed in all this, but it's good to see everyone else get back a swing too. So yeah, guys, thanks for having me, and excited to mock it up over on Sleeper, who I've always, appreciated since finding out really who they were over the past few years.
And speaking of the best balls, we've been getting a lot of that conversation going. The Scotty Fish Bowl obviously is in full action. You've been drafting alongside here, Johnny and Big Travie. Is that right?
Sounds right. Yeah. I mean, our group was being pretty freaking slow to start, but I think we finally almost made it through the entire thing. I think some of the fans in our group were holding us back a little bit, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's kind of tough to try and bite your tongue a little bit, oh no, take your time, you're good, and then sometimes you're like, just hurry the F up, man. I want to draft my guy. Right, Ian, I noticed we were both part of the Justin Fields and Baker combo club. That's so you and I and 10 other people, we got tagged in that thing, so that's pretty cool.
I was freaking about to strangle myself trying to consider Trey Lance versus Baker, and it's one of these things. I like Trey Lance, and I think everyone else does at this point. But I think as we get the offseason goes on and on, we just get more and more hyped about these guys, and we start acting a little bit reckless to land your guys. So I just had to be like, look, as great as Trey Lance might be, I've seen Baker be that great at the professional level already. Let's not get too carried away here. So I am pretty high on Baker this year. I think Stefanski kind of ramps up the passing year two. OBJ and Baker, they're going to connect one of these years and get the best version of each of them. And I think, hey, if we want to talk long shot MVP bets, man, I'm not exactly sure what Baker's odds are, but if he's around that, +4, +5,000 range, might not be the worst way to spend $25.
Yeah, second year in that Stefanski system should be something good they can actually get going here. Maybe they'll go to a next level.
So I think we can go ahead and get this mock draft cooking, and we'll keep this conversation rolling along. I want to give a big shout out right now to talk about Ian. We talk about Big Travie. We talk about Johnny Game Time Hicks. This is your Fantasy Whispers panel for today, but it would be nothing without Whisper Nation. So thanks y'all for showing up today. We got NYG Noah in the 1 spot, the Cat's Pajamas in the 3, Pizza Belly in the 4, Draft Hustle in the 5, Jade Blizzy, our Whisper Nation Listener League champion 2020 in the 6th spot. We got Ian here in the 7, Free Duke Johnson, The News at 8, Don Fleck, thanks for joining us again, Donnie in the 9. We got T. Chris Boss at 10, Big Travie at 11, and Brokeout 38 coming in at the 12-team PPR Superflex. You know the drill. But Ian, I wanted to ask you, we're talking about OBJ, we're talking about Baker. Any concern them not sitting together at the Conor McGregor fight?
That was my one big takeaway. But I get it. Baker's just being cool with his tight ends, so it's all good. We had another, I think it might have been the first Poirier. No, because that one was in Abu Dhabi. Oh, I think it was the Masvidal Usman one, the first one they really had fans back at. Brady was there with Blaine Gabbert and Mike Evans. Antonio Brown was hanging out with Jake Paul on the other side of things. So that's another red flag. And we had, I think it was Daniel Jones went to a Mets game or something with Kyle Rudolph, and Evan Ingram was nowhere to be found. So I love the storyline, who's the quarterback going to these sporting events with. So yeah, man, not ideal, but I don't know. I've seen OBJ at Conor fights for the last 5 years, so he probably just forgot to give his QB1 a heads up. So it's all good. We're still on the OBJ comeback season bandwagon.
As cool as Baker is, and he's a quarterback, so obviously is cool. OBJ level cool is a whole different level. So maybe it's hey man, I can't get you, Baker, even into my after parties because I'm OBJ, I think there's just a different level there.
Do you guys see Ramsey's list? Hardest wide receivers to guard. Number 1, Hopkins. Number 2, Odell Beckham. Jalen Ramsey. I feel like his opinion matters.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, well, and you always learn to respect the guys that are they're the big trash talkers, but they also that they're being sincere when they're giving their dues and they're saying, hey, this guy's really really good. They're on legit on top of their game.
Yeah, I feel like Ramsey's always been real. Remember that damn GQ interview?
Yeah, dude. He never holds back. All right, we ready? We ready to get this mock going?
Yeah.
Yeah. So not to harp too much on this insight here, but so the OBJ not sitting there, we can excuse because of past behavior. But do we think that Austin Hooper might be getting a little bit more action coming up? Is there any reason to think that this former top paid tight end, former number one before getting hurt and being dealt away from Atlanta, any reason to think that we might be getting a little more action from Austin Hooper?
I think it's fine where he's going right now. It's kind of like Tyler Higbee from last year. Like, no, we weren't drafting those guys as top 10 options, but now year 2 in the offense, again, expecting the passing game to take a little bit of a step forward. I think that'd be reasonable to expect out of it. So let's see. Do I got one more tier? Dak. There we go. Had to make sure to get a tier 1 QB. Happy to have gotten Dak. After that, things get a little more rough. This randomly, like, I feel like we every couple of weeks or maybe months, we get the is Dak Prescott actually good discussion on like real life football Twitter. And it's like, can we move past this already? Like, not even just last year's small sample, but last, I think, 2 years, we've seen Dak as, someone that actually he lifts up his teammates. He's not a product of the system. We used to argue if Dak was like a product of Zeke. Like, it has gone so far in reverse, as it should in recent years. I just think the argument's a bit tired at this point.
Maybe they're working together, right? Like, players develop. These are human beings. They're trying to get better. They put in very expensive development coaches to have that happen. And maybe Zeke could have supported some of the wins early on, but then you develop a better acumen and understanding of the game, and now you're just messing them up.
Yeah. Are we full PPR? Cool.
Do you think there is any reserve in the health of that ankle that he will be less likely to run on it this year? And that could, because he had 3 rushing touchdowns in 5 games last year. And that was one of the, and I'm not saying that was his only game. Of course, he was throwing for over 350 yards per game. He was getting several touchdowns.
And he caught one.
Yeah, and he caught. So like that is all that stuff is like pretty hard to replicate, right? As far as, receiving a touchdown and just the way that they were winning, they were down by so much. I know that Dallas Cowboys defense is still bad, but is there any hesitation in your mind because of all those things that happened last year kind of seem to just be aligning properly and that might not actually align this year? Or is there any hesitancy as far as like, will that ankle be, I know it's going to be healthy, but will it be in his mind every time he, takes a snap? We see guys when they come back from like ACL injuries, things like that, they have a little bit of hesitation. Do you think that's going to play any factor in Dak this season?
I feel like if someone's not going to have that hesitation, it will be Dak. I mean, that dude has never seen like a first down line he hasn't thought he could get through. I mean, the amount of linebackers he's just tried to truck over the years. One of his vintage plays in that Seahawks wildcard game, flipping head over heels on like that 3rd and 14 draw or whatever the down and distance was. But, you got that issue, but I think with a lot of these guys, we can kind of paint that same potential regression in the rushing department. Kyler's out here saying that he doesn't think his legs should be as big a part of the offense. Is Josh Allen really going to keep running for 8 touchdowns a year when he's worth nine figures worth of millions of dollars, here pretty soon? I'd be a little bit worried about that. And, so Dak, I think the increase we're getting with him actually having a healthy offensive line will overcome any, potential reduction on the ground. So, no, I'm not too concerned about it. No, hold on. My thing's freaking behind. Why can't I draft? It's just, okay, I'm up now.
You got to refresh it.
Yeah, it was telling me T. Chris Boss was up. I was like, come on. All right, let's see what we got.
So we got some people in the chat, as Austin mentioned. Justin in here saying, Whisper Nation gang, what up? We got Cat's Pajamas saying, what ups, guys? We appreciate you guys in here. But one of the cold ones says, I drafted 10 in a redraft Superflex. I'm starting to lean towards doing RB, then RB, QB, or wide receiver QB. Anything we recommend here, guys?
Cowboys back. Let's go.
Oh, there you go.
Nice.
This is what I was going to ask a question about Zeke before Ian made his selection. Travi, I know you got a question here queued up, but I'm personally, it's not even a show flow question. It's a personal question of Zeke. Travis,
luxuries of the host. He gets to be selfish a little bit here. Yeah. Ask
Travis,
away, bro.
We're working out on Saturday talking about Zeke. Is Zeke a little on the washed side, or is Zeke really holding back because there was no reason to go hard last year and we should expect a Zeke of old? What do you think, Ian? You obviously took him here and you had a little bit of pep in your step when you did.
I mean, when Dak was out there, is the PPR RB3. As horrendous as last year went, I think he finished like the RB8 or 9. That's the freaking floor you have when you're drafting this dude that's going to flirt with 300 touches in the worst case scenario. Like, we would have seen Pollard take over this backfield by now if that was going to happen. I mean, he had that massive game against the 49ers. What happened next 2 weeks? Zeke went back to getting his 20-plus touches, and Pollard went back to being an overqualified number 2 running back. So, I think we kind of Zeke looks like, quote-unquote, washed next to Pollard because Pollard's numbers are literally out of this world. This dude is tied with Derrick Henry for most yards after contact per carry since he came in, tied with Nick Chubb for most missed tackles forced per carry. I know those guys are doing it on far more volume. I'm not saying Pollard is actually as good as those guys, but like we'd be having the, Pollard deserves more touches conversation in pretty much any other backfield. When Zeke came back from his injury, he actually tied the single game high mark from 2020 for most forced missed tackles on the ground in that game against the Eagles in like week 15 or whatever. So, honestly, the biggest issues were those just inexcusable fumbles to start the year. Managed to fix that as it went on, as you would hope for. But I just think, again, like Dak, we're getting this offensive line back, which I think should really help, everyone involved in the entire offense. And Zeke, again, it's hard. You only need one hand to count the number of guys, likely to get more touches than them. And ultimately, in my mind, fantasy football, you're better off chasing that volume instead of, quote unquote, who's washed. So, and we also got the offseason, best shape of his life articles going around and stuff like that too. So for me, Zeke, we're getting him at a slight discount, and I'm happy to scoop him up as what I get him at, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, RB7. Like, come on, that's easy money.
It feels good on that one.
I was telling Austin over the weekend, I think that if you can say one guy is like a head case, it's Zeke. And what we noticed last year was maybe just Zeke was like, Dak's not here. I don't really feel like giving it my all. Almost like he was taking some plays off because at the beginning of the year, he looked great, as you said, with Dak. And then in the same year, he looked not so great. And then we're having this Pollard conversation. Both his running back coach and Dak giving, signs of boosts of confidence. I think that's a good sign for Zeke.
Yeah, I mean, he did look good in that offense once Dak left, though. I mean, we're not really holding that against some of the other guys, but let's see. Hold on. Oh, Adams just went. All right. Oh, well.
And I just think that's kind of the big question. We have just seen so many other running backs in a similar time period, whether it be Todd Gurley, whether it be David Johnson, Leonard Fournette's in a similar category, almost not at the same time. And it's like, dang, when this tread gets light, it really does. And I think there's enough of a mirage getting in Zeke's ways and enough variables. I'm excited about it too. But I also want to ask you a real question here, Ian. This is for my own draft edification. After Zeke, we all like Zeke here. We're all looking through all the muck with it. But you get this really interesting cast of second-year running backs coming in. We get our Cam Akers, we get our Antonio Gibsons, we get our J.K. Dobbins, our CEHs. How are you stacking those names up right now? Is there one that's an especially higher tier than the rest, or is it personal preference to you?
I have Akers over Jonathan Taylor in like full point PPR. So, that's always by a whopping one spot, but that's always the one that gets people's feathers ruffled the most. It just comes down to like Jonathan Taylor, for him to be as good as everyone thinks he's going to be, like he just needs to be this efficiency freak because he is the only running back being drafted this high that's going to be in a 3-back backfield. And I'm not saying Marlon Mack himself is the problem here, but like for these other running backs we're taking, like Zeke, Kamara, Henry, Saquon, like Dalvin, all these guys at worst have one other guy taking away some reps. Nyheim Hines is still their pass down back, and Mack or Wilkins, like he was last year, is going to steal, 15% of the snaps? Not much, not enough to be anything close to a fantasy factor, but Akers, best case scenario, is getting that Todd Gurley every snap role that he was given down the stretch last year. I understand Darrell Henderson was hurt at the very end, but we were already seeing Akers start to pull away with that. So for me, I'm chasing that Akers just sky high ceiling because Taylor's best case is Nyheim Hines is there as the backup, and Taylor just more or less kind of, maybe I'm wrong, maybe Mack and Wilkins have no business out there. So Taylor will be the lead back of a productive 2-back committee. Akers' best case is having a top 5 like volume in the entire NFL with what they kind of do with their number 1 RB. So I know it was a little more of a committee last year, but they didn't replace Malcolm Brown. McVay's already been hyping up Akers, saying everything he can do as a pass catcher as well. and he can pass if you remember his days back at Florida State. So I just think, again, if we're just really chasing that, top overall potential, I think Akers just has the higher ceiling than Taylor. Who would I pick in real life to be my team's running back? Definitely Jonathan Taylor. I just don't think there's enough concern being given the fact that we're going from Rivers, the definition of a statue who's historically always fed his running backs targets, to Wentz, who maybe he's good again. He better be, because last year he was one of the 5 worst quarterbacks in the entire NFL, and he runs around a lot more, which might not be great for Taylor's target share. So, it's an interesting conversation. I know I'm in the majority in it, and again, I have them one spot next to each other, so I'm not saying you shouldn't be coming away with Taylor. I do think Akers, out of the second-year backfield, has the highest ceiling.
Really appreciate that take. And you said something especially interesting there of, well, you have Akers predicted as 1 point ahead. If you were actually on the clock making that call, you would go Jonathan Taylor. Is that from the just
I go Akers over Taylor.
Oh, you would. I misunderstood that. Okay. So you take care. Okay. Are you talking
about standard with no PPR attached? Okay, I'll go Taylor. But I think Akers has a chance to catch 50, 60 passes in the best case scenario. I don't see Taylor touching the 35, 36 he had last year again without Rivers.
I was bringing that up as a point. Johnny, Travis, and I oftentimes say when you're splitting hairs making your predictions, do your research. But when it comes down to the clock, go with the guy you want to root for. Go with the guy who, if it doesn't pan out exactly as you hope it might be, then you're still going to be excited with him on your team, because there really isn't anything worse than going with a hairline call, picking a player you didn't actually want just because you thought he was predicted a little bit better, and then he sucks, and the guy you were in between and actually liked is a game changer for the rest of the season. Do you have any players right now that you're especially excited about? Of course, other than Auden Tate, are there any other players that you're just kind of it's almost like a my guy or a bromance situation that you're feeling, especially kind of at this juncture in the draft, or maybe a little bit further down?
Yeah, we just actually had a PFF draft guide just for fantasy went out today, and they put out a little graphic where it's my wide receivers that are ranked highest above consensus. And the 4 I have that stick out are Michael Thomas, who I just took off the board. He's my wide receiver 6, wide receiver 10 consensus. Deontay Johnson, in 4-point PPR, is my wide receiver 14 because targets matter and drops don't in fantasy football, people. I have OBJ as my wide receiver 22 and Devontae Smith as my wide receiver 26. So I'd say Devontae is, man, he's someone I'm just consistently taking, usually a good kind of round above consensus, because he has a legit chance of just absolutely dominating this target share. And if we had any sort of evidence that this dude's size was a problem on the football field, okay, maybe that'd be a problem. We don't. And we got a team with no target competition that just traded up to get him in the first place. Man, I think Devontae Smith, he deserves to be right there in the same tier with Jamar Chase.
Rookie concern does not get you at all? We're past that these days?
I mean, if he was in a crowded offense, might be a problem. But I like to think when you're drafting this dude with the 10th overall pick, you have a good plan to get him involved. So, hey, he's going as the wide receiver 38. And, yeah, I have him ranked about 10 spots higher. I just think it's one of these things where if week 1 passes and Devontae has 12 targets, no one's really going to bat an eye about it. It's a little unsure because he is a rookie. But when you look at him sharing the offense, Jalen Reagor, Travis Fulgham, no offense to those guys, but come on, this was the Eagles. Their offense was the one offense we could look at and say a rookie could come in and immediately be the undisputed number 1. I think that would be Devontae.
I do want to say that I do think it's so funny that Deontay, everyone, all they want to talk about is Deontay's drops, all this stuff, when it's we don't even realize that, all right, Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, Mecole Hardman, Tyreek Hill, DK Metcalf,
Javonte Adams,
Stephon Diggs, no, not Adams. All those guys that I just listed. So Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, DK, Tyreek Hill. We don't talk about those guys and say, hey, do we worry about the drops with those guys? But guess what? All those guys were top 12 in drops last year, and we don't say anything about their drops. It's a part of a game. Sometimes it is a factor, and then what you saw with Deontay during that second half, he really got that confidence up, and Ben really worked with him, and you saw the drops go down. So I think that is something that people don't really need to worry about, but they are making it a huge deal.
Yeah, I made that point in the next question, which is it's a fair question, but people say, well, those other guys have such higher average target depths, like Deontay's dropping these short ones. Next Gen Stats has come out and shown with good analytical evidence that there are more drops in those short areas of the field, which kind of makes sense. I mean, you know, like Russell Wilson's throwing those beautiful moon balls that you could see just falling softly into your hands. Ben's freaking jacking one, you know, off, you know, behind him, you know, 3 yards after the pressure got to him immediately. So it's just one of the, it's a fair concern. Again, it's a reasonable question, but volume, the average target depth, everything points to Deontay Johnson still being a great wide receiver in my mind. You know, hey, the efficiency isn't ideal. I get that. That's the only thing holding him back from being, you know, this year's, you know, Calvin Ridley turned Chris Godwin, just like the rising third-year receiver that's all of a sudden maybe in line for some increased target share. But I just think that, hashtag watch the film with the guy, whether it's as a punt returner on screens going deep. I just think Deontay does everything right as a wide receiver, and you know these drops I think will be a conversation of the past here pretty soon.
Yeah, I think if we're gonna discount Chase Claypool at times and say like, oh, he had all these deep ball attempts, but you know Ben wasn't on the same page, can't we give Deontay some of that benefit of the doubt too, with like Ben being like off kilter? And you know, on record, obviously best shape of his life. What they always say that, but Ben has said my elbow's stronger than it's ever been this year. We know that that's probably hyperbole, but still, it's something to be like. I didn't think that Ben had an issue getting the ball down the field. I think he had an issue being accurate last year, and that's what we kind of saw. And I think that can get right from year to year after a major surgery like that.
It wasn't this like end of 2014 Peyton Manning, like can this guy still throw a football 30 yards type of thing? Yeah. And look at the ADPs, man. Like every year, I feel like there's one of these quarterbacks where the entire offense is, you know, being drafted pretty highly, and the quarterbacks so low. Like even Juju and Claypool are still going as you know, pretty early wide receiver threes. Oh, someone sniped Baker from me. Damn you!
We got you.
Damn you!
Clock's on you right now, Ian. I did want to ask Johnny real quick there about his double up tight end selection there. Travis Kelce and Darren Waller with a strong positional advantage. Johnny, what was going through your mind with those selections? Dominance.
There were some,
yeah. Being better than everyone.
Yeah, exactly. There were some people that were doing this in the Scott Fish Bowl. They were able to like land the dual tight ends. And I haven't been able to ever be in a position where I was able to do that. And so taking Kyler in the first, I was like, okay, this is, I like Kyler. I have him as my number one. And then I was kind of shocked that Kelce was still there. I wanted Nick Chubb, but of course, Catch Pajamas snipes him from me. So I was like, all right, once Kelce got there, and then it just kind of set up to where Waller was available. And in the third, and I was like, why not try this? I haven't been able to actually try this in a draft yet, but I'm really intrigued to see how I can pan it out and how I can kind of maneuver it around and see if I could truly build a nice team off of this, because I do like the advantage it gives you from a strategy standpoint. You guys know me, you know how I like to play. I like to play into the strategy as far as fantasy football, and not just like also the players and trying to get the best ones. And when you're looking at taking the two best pieces off the board at the tight end position, that's super limited. It gives me a huge advantage, or gives anybody who has them.
And I'm going to say this just because I've been someone who's been an ignorant sleeper a little bit on this. I've been a big Darren Waller fan since he came out a few years ago, and they started talking about him on Hard Knocks. But Darren Waller finished with just under 1,200 yards and 9 touchdowns last season. Like, this is a wide receiver one that we're talking about who doesn't really have anybody threatening him for that top spot from a pass catching perspective. Travi and I talk about Henry Ruggs all the time. We're hoping we'd love to see that upside, but Darren Waller has the rapport with Derek Carr. Darren Waller has the skill set. Darren Waller is 6'6", 255 pounds, and is still just 28 years old. Like, is this going to be his best year that he's had thus far?
I mean, he's the number one receiver that we happen to call a tight end, him and Kelce. I mean, Kyle Pitts should have come out of Florida and just said, I'm a wide receiver. I don't want to be called a tight end, because the money is so much different. It's not even fair, man. I think it was Greg Olson, at their little tight end youth thing, just saying like,
we do everything. Yeah.
Do everything the wide receivers do, and we're also blocking out there. I mean, it makes no sense, but you look at it, and like Kelsey's contract with the Chiefs right now, he's making less per year than Sammy Watkins got in that contract he got from the Chiefs a few years back. So bad Watkins contract, sure, that's a story for another day. It's just it's just a shame though. It's why Jimmy Graham went to arbitration and all that a couple years ago. I guess it was more like a decade ago now, but over the whole franchise tag thing when he was with the Saints. So it's just awfully arbitrary. And, some people try to use it almost like as an insult to Kelsey, like he's soft or something like that. It's like you're just calling him underpaid if you're trying to say he's a wide receiver instead of a tight end and kind of being a dick about it. So there's some guys like Mike Gesicki who legit spend, 70-80% of their snaps out wide as it is. So Kelsey and Waller do play traditional inline tight end on the majority of their snaps still. It's just, it's weird when people kind of really listen to the positional designations, because I agree they are anyone's idea of just a number one receiver, regardless of what you want to, call their position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, remember, Austin, we were on the matchup show talking about the way that John Gruden was talking about Waller, like, oh, he's Travis Kelce. Like, you guys don't realize, he's as good as Travis Kelce, maybe better. And we're like, yeah, haha, Gruden, shut up. Here, Grandpa, eat your pudding or whatever. But it's like he was right. Like, he knew, he saw what he saw in Darren Waller, and he moved his offense through him. And now Waller is a guy that's soaking up the same kind of targets and volume that Kelce does in his offense.
I think that's great. I'm personally, he was just taken this round here in the 7th. How are we feeling about TJ Hawkinson on this one? Does TJ Hawkinson have an ability to break 1,000 yards this season with his new Jared Goff quarterback? Oh, you did go with Trey.
I went with Trey there. Yeah, I'm telling you, my screen's glitching. I almost got autoed on that one. But yeah, well, I think once he's out there, man, again, I was actually writing up about Justin Fields yesterday, and this is kind of the tough part because I know a bunch of people in our industry love doing the Fantasy Pros ranking competition, and hey, a lot of smart guys win that and everything, but I'm just not convinced that, these median ranking, type of deals are like what's best. I mean, who do you think you want on your team more in fantasy this year, like Trey Lance and Justin Fields, or Sam Darnold, or maybe Ben Roethlisberger? Like, I think we'd all agree Fields and Lance. We want the rushing upside, we want all that. Like, they're going to be ranked higher once they're starting. But if you're in this ranking competition, you need to put them lower because they're not going to play 17 games. I mean, we've an easy way people go on Twitter and they kind of say numbers don't lie, but you kind of can make them skewed sometimes when you're going with full season long production, like what I was talking about with Zeke earlier. I did it myself just now where I said Zeke was RB 8 or 9 last year. I think he was closer to borderline RB1 on a per game basis, which is more important. So I just think there's a big difference between ranks for trying to win one of these competitions and actually building a championship football team, which is obviously the goal that we're trying to compete in these drafts. So just kind of realizing that difference is why it's why when you go on a projection page, like, those are not necessarily your fantasy football ranks, because so much can change if a guy's only going to be starting 10-11 games. We just need to keep in mind, what can we get out of those 10-11 games, and is it worth it? So I'm excited with Lance here because I already got my QB1, and it's like, okay, at the end of the draft, worst case, I can grab Jimmy G and I'll be set. I don't even think I need to. Superflex, Trey Lance, I can wait it out. So we'll see what happens.
You brought up a really good point here that segues into a question that I had prepared here, Ian, and Whisper Nation. If y'all aren't following Ian on Twitter, do yourself a favor, type in @IHARTITZ and then click that little follow button in the top right-hand corner. Ian, is there any other place that Whisper Nation should get plugged in with you right now? I know you're with Pro Football Focus. We know that you're the president of the Cordero Patterson Fan Club. But is there any other bits right here? We'll make sure we get you plugged in at the end as well. But
yeah, just check out the Pro Football or PFF Fantasy Football podcast. I host it, and new episodes every single day. I do these kind of solo pods, Fantasy Files, just ripped off the name from those old great commercials that NFL used to put out. But solo editions, out every single day, where it's just 10, 15 minutes long, me talking about a different situation. Also have fellow PFF analyst Andrew Erickson on there at least once or twice a week. And, trying to get more and more players and media analysts on there too. Had Antonio Gibson, an interview with him last Friday, which was fantastic. Really cool guy. So yeah, check that out if you just want to get caught up to speed here in July and keeping on right on through August and the season, obviously.
That's fantastic. Whisper Nation, do yourself a favor, link up with the Pro Football Focus podcast with all the articles and all the great analysis coming out your way through Ian. But I wanted to ask you this one. I'm just kind of curious as well. You talked right now about other fellow analysts putting together projections as what they really think, and then also to try to kind of win competitions. Can you talk about what, from a casual fantasy football fan, a casual football fantasy player, what's something that might be a big surprising bit of information to hear from industry professionals, whether it be the rankings they make are actually to try to win awards, not maybe to so much hit it right on the head, or anything that comes to mind that would be a little bit surprising from a casual perspective to now the perspective you find yourself in?
I think that's it. Yeah, you just kind of, I've seen, I've had the pleasure of working with some people that have just finished really well in these contests, and you're just incentivized to not really take stands on these players when in reality, you do kind of want to be chasing that upside, like Ricky Bobby said, first or last. I mean, that's kind of the game we're playing here. And, if you can go ahead and just earn that, top 10 ranking or whatever, that's fine. But, for me, like I always hated in high school when, you're applying for colleges or jobs and they make like your ACT or SAT like the only thing anyone cares about. Like, I don't want to be defined by one number. So why would I sign up for some competition that doesn't pay me to do it anyway? So like for me, first or last, if you're good at something, don't do it for free. So it just doesn't make sense for me to, get out in the streets. But, more power to the people that are good with it. Just realize when you're looking at some of these ranks specifically for that competition, realize that it's not necessarily, who you should. I don't think it's a great proxy for start sits.
Really good take on this.
I also don't think like when you're like, especially leaning into this last year a lot more and having to for my own fantasy rosters, there are so many times, and I got to give it to Whisper Nation too. Like they'll get on here sometimes and they'll ask us about a lineup question about, 2 players. And you're sitting here and you're like, okay, I know like it, it'd be like Terry McLaurin or, Zacchaeus, and but like Terry McLaurin is going up against the hardest corner in the league. And then or I guess Russell Gage would have been a way better example last year of, someone where you're just like, okay, you remove the name and like Russell Gage is in a great matchup against a team, that gives up, way more points to the slot wide receiver. And you have that, sometimes you have to obviously you build that trust with your followers and things like that. But people who just go on those rankings, like you're not going to put, Russell Gage over a Terry McLaurin. But when, you do these shows and you answer these like sit starts for people, you get a feel for like, hey, what we always say, like, do you need to shoot for the stars? Do you need a big upside game, or do you just need to plug in guys? I think it changes so much. It changes so much that those rankings, those just like not blank page, but you know what I'm saying? Like they're just names on a ranking sheet, don't really tell you all the information you need.
I think some guys like Tyler Lockett kind of get a bad rap, like sorry for being so good on certain weeks that they win the entire game on their own. Like I think you could argue, and I don't have a study to back me up on this, but I need to look into it. If anyone listening wants to do it for me, that'd be fantastic. But I don't know, like give me the guy that's going between wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 4 instead of just the middling borderline wide receiver 3 every time. I think you need a mix of it. That's probably like the answer of it, but it's we talk about my two biggest pet peeves off season fantasy Twitter is the injury prone crowd who just thinks they can predict injuries for next year for guys that aren't hurt. And the people that just say, we're talking about Joe Mixon. They're like, well, take out the game where he had 3 touchdowns and 200 yards. And then did he do? It's like, no, you can't do that. The only, I use this example. The only time where you can do that is like when I think it was Bilal Powell, maybe it was Isaiah. I think it was Bilal Powell for the Jets. Like he went up the middle, he gained 4 yards, he tripped over his feet. The entire defense gave up on the play, and he like walks into the end zone unevaded for like 70 yards. In that type of situation, okay, kind of fluky. Cornerback like tears their ACL and falls down. Dude scores a 70-yard touchdown. There are a few
is feeling attacked right now.
There's a few exceptions, but just like we don't take out, the bad plays from guys, we can't just take out the big plays. They're a professional player. They made the play. Use it in your analysis. But you can point out they had only 1 good game out of 5, but don't just yank it out. Don't be the guy like, oh, you take away the 80-yard run and he only averaged 4 yards per carry. He made the play. We got to count.
It's kind of like one of those things that if you are doubting that so quickly, like go out on a football field and start playing a little bit. And I just mean it by like, oh, they had that one breakaway play. It's like, okay, maybe some of the stars aligned for this guy's breakneck speed to emerge, and he busted out and showed you what he could do. It's like, but that's actually like, you do that all the time with a lot of these players. Like Tyreek Hill doesn't show you what he's capable of every single game, but he gets a handful of chances over the course of a season. You're like, oh, this guy is about this business. So it's like, you get a guy, it's like, oh, and you'll hear it all the time. He did this amazing thing in a game, but his teammates will say, yeah, you should have seen what he's been doing in practice for the last couple of weeks. Like, it can happen. So don't discount that one big play, because he's been working to have that one opportunity to like show the world what it's about.
That's
like
the whole deal.
Auden Tate 2020 training camp MVP. People forget.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to tie this back into Auden Tate somehow.
It always ties back into Auden Tate.
Tom Brady winning a Super Bowl was partially because of what Auden Tate was able to do in his rookie season.
Well,
Tom Brady won a Super Bowl in the same state Auden Tate went to college. Coincidence?
Yeah.
I don't know.
There are no coincidences.
Well, Auden Tate was Tom Brady's guest at a UFC fight, so I think that's why.
They're sitting next to each other. You can tell.
Melvin, bro, I don't know if you could pay me to draft Melvin Gordon this year. Like, he's this year's Leonard Fournette.
I think it's just so sad, all the information that's coming out about him. Like, I feel like he was like at an all-time high back in March and April. We were all excited about his potential, and then just since then, it's just been all downhill. And I have like you, I have not jumped off a player more far away than Melvin Gordon this year.
Ian, and can I get a little bit of insight in that one? Not disagreeing with the take, but just to set it up on the side for our listeners here, we're talking about the number 14 running back in standard and PPR last year, like top of the RB2s. 28, still on the right side of 30, if you'd say that. Had over 1,000 yards total with 10 touchdowns last year. And we got a rookie running back there. You're not touching. Couldn't pay you to touch Melvin Gordon, though. Why is that?
I mean, I don't know why you're drafting the guy at 35th overall if you don't plan on giving him a good chunk of this workload. And I just think from that point, we're looking at an aging back that, yeah, okay, he did some okay things last year. But again, we got to be careful going full-on volume over what he was doing on a per-game basis. Per game, he was actually the PPR RB24 last season, much closer to a low-end RB2 there, really on the borderline. And I just think that, you know, in this offense, already not the most fantasy-friendly situation there. And, like, I just like, if Melvin Gordon gets cut before this season or traded, it wouldn't be the most shocking thing ever. He had that late season DUI last year. Like, it was an okay year, but I don't think he's necessarily in the best graces with the team. If he was, they wouldn't have just drafted someone at 35th overall. So, you know, it was a situation last year where I think Phillip Lindsay, when we saw him out there, you know, certainly resembled the better back of the two. Unfortunately, you know, Lindsay was a little more nicked up, I think, than usual last year. So they weren't able to consistently go to him. It's right there, and he's going in that RB dead zone area I've usually been trying to avoid as a whole. I mean, I took Damian Harris last round, so I guess I did dip my toe into the water there a little bit. But I think in general, you know, especially if you can get, you know, and more so in best ball, I think Superflex is a little bit different with, you know, how you got to kind of do your roster construction. But more and more, man, particularly in, you know, the underdog best ball format, I'm just taking, you know, hopefully one or two of the top 15 running backs early, and then I'm waiting until, like, you know, the RB30 range, starting to get my AJ Dillon guys and, you know, the Pollard, Madison, Latavius handcuff range and guys like that, instead of these, you know, the Mike Davis, Melvin Gordon, you know, that sort of tier where it's like, yeah, I can see it working out, but there's just also a lot more risk. And when they're being priced next to wide receiver twos in the same range that we don't feel nearly as afraid of, I've just been going with the receiver.
Fair enough. And you brought up some good points there. Any other bits of advice coming into the 2021 draft of how you're somewhat reading the tea leaves, or advice for intermediate to start-up players on the ways they should be framing their drafts, or just ways and tips or tricks right now for this upcoming draft? Is there anything this year that stands out? I asked it the first time I asked that question is you've got your pick coming up.
Oh, right. I'll tell you what, though, I'm about to get a steal if I don't get sniped here. Come on. Or am I on the clock?
You're now on the clock.
You're now on the clock.
Did Boyd go? Yes.
No.
All right. Tyler Boyd, baby.
I want to hear that. Tyler Boyd.
I would say the big thing I always try to follow is, like, just draft players closer to their floor than ceiling if possible. And don't, you know, we don't hate players. We hate ADPs. So don't let like last year's mistake, influence who you're gonna draft tomorrow. Like Clyde Edwards-Helaire was going as the RB4 or RB5 last year. Clearly, that was more of a ceiling outcome. Now, when he's going as like the RB15, okay, that's much more reasonable. This dude was 4th in the NFL in touches before Le'Veon Bell got into town. Joe Mixon, everyone's so mad that he only played 5 games last year. Like, he only missed 2 games the previous 2 years before that. Like, if you're calling him injury prone instead of, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, guys that miss, more games than Joe Mixon did last year. Like, you're letting you being mad last year influence kind of your decision making for this next season. So I would just say, really consider, where is this guy being priced? Because, a lot of times, I do articles on all these situations, and, I did one on the 49ers and the 49ers backfield or the Bills backfield. Everyone's just like, no, ew, gross. I don't want these guys, and they bring up good issues like Josh Allen's scoring the touchdowns in Buffalo, 49ers, they use a committee. Fair, but that's why these guys are available as RB3s. Like, you're not losing your draft by taking this guy priced as an RB35. In the early rounds, you don't want to stray too far from ADP. You just don't want to lose in your first 3-4 picks. But I think later, when you can find these guys in offenses where they're the projected target leader, they're the projected rushing leader, yet they're still going cheap, those are situations I'm really trying to go in on. So, Zach Moss, I think he's one of the best late round running backs. I saw him go a couple rounds before me. That was a good snag. And yeah, for me, Tyler Boyd, it's a situation where like him, Chase, and Higgins, I think reasonably should be projected for about the same amount of targets each, probably low triple digits for each of them. Yet Boyd's going a good 10, 15 spots on the behind him. So, yeah, I think Chase and Higgins are better than Boyd in real life, but it'd hardly be surprising if Boyd's the more productive receiver. So, yeah, I guess that'd be the last tip. Like, we're playing fantasy football. This is not real life. It does not make sense that you get a full point per reception and this equal to gaining 10 rushing yards. Like, come on, that's ridiculous. It's the game we play, and we got to attack it accordingly.
Game we play, we got to attack it accordingly. Words well said. As were those initial ones of we don't hate players, we hate ADPs.
Yeah.
I think that's the nugget for Whisper Nation to put in your back pocket, invest that into your portfolio, and don't ever sell it.
Don't ever sell it.
Diamond hands all the way on that bit.
I love how that Ian's that standard league truther over there. He says it doesn't make sense that we get 1 full point for all this rushing. He's like still out there.
I like the points per first down.
The working man's guy.
I like the points per first down.
That makes sense, right? Like, they're working really hard to get that 2 inches, and that rewards the team a lot more. You get a first down back. Is that actually something that should be incorporated into standard scoring?
Well, actually, how about this? Sleeper has an awesome mode, and this was actually kind of what turned me on to Sleeper in the first place. They have tiered, like, average target depth incorporated points per reception. So when Deebo Samuel catches, the Jimmy Garoppolo 6-inch pop pass, that's not the same amount of points as Julio catching a freaking 60-yard bomb down the sideline. Like, that's where I get mad. These damn pop passes that are all around the league now, getting an entire point for that is just infuriating. So,
or the like the Pat Mahomes quick 2-hand touch pass to Tyreek.
All that, yeah, it's absurd.
Yeah. You're just like, and when you have those players, you love it. It was especially, oh man, last year I had that stack of Tyreek and Pat. And so I just loved that because it was like 14 points for nothing. Like, and it's just like but if you're playing against that, you're like, you say that, it's like, why is that worth the same as, like you said, like a big bomb down the field or anything like that?
Deebo went right after me. I kind of like that call. We're starting to see that discrepancy grow a little too much. I saw Ayuk go, I think a round or two earlier. Yeah, and look, I do think Ayuk is the better pure receiver. I mean, he might. I know last year, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb are kind of like the 2 poster childs for that just incredible class of wide receivers. But Ayuk, man, he looks like he might just be as good as those guys. I'm just worried about the overall target competition. And if Trey Lance gets in and is, as raw as a passer as, some people think he potentially could be, I mean, Deebo's the one that should, not really have that much of an issue depending on who's at quarterback. He had more yards after the catch than receiving yards last season. He has like a a running back route tree, which is fine, man. He's a monster. Like, they just do a good job getting him the ball. But basically, like, if the 49ers were going with Mac Jones, and they had gone down that road, I think that would have been way better for Ayuk, because now, I mean, Ayuk could easily just finish third on this team in targets behind Debo and Kittle, and it wouldn't be like that surprising. So seeing that discrepancy, that's another thing to keep an eye on. Same thing with DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. Like, we just can't only say like who's the better real life football player. We got to look at the targets and, what they could potentially do depending on the situation. So I'd say the 49ers and Panthers receivers, two spots that really stick out to me in that.
That's a really good, interesting point there. And we knew how well DJ Moore did with deep balls last year, and Teddy Bridgewater just did not like going deep on this. Do you think Sam Darnold is going to open that up a little bit more, or is his reunification there with Robbie Anderson actually going to edge Robbie Anderson towards the more preferred fantasy football wide receiver option as you're making your 12th round pick here?
Yeah, I think Darnold just freaking sucks, guys.
Darnold sucks. That's you are
really.
It's not a symptom of Adam Gase. It's a symptom of his own suckage.
Like, people keep bringing out Ryan Tannehill. Like, we just see like all these examples of Ryan Tannehill over the years. It's insulting what Tannehill did before Adam Gase in Miami when he was actually good. And Tannehill like makes sense as a late career bloomer. The guy literally played wide receiver effectively. He had like 800 yards as a freshman at A&M receiving. He did it his second year. And then he transitioned to quarterback. And because he's just freaking good, he's figured it out throughout his career. Like, what Sam Darnold had an awesome throw against the 49ers and the Colts last year. That's it. Everything else was running the ball, man. And when I see Joe Flacco play better than him in the exact same situation, like, no, I can't get behind, this big bounce back for him. I think Teddy Bridgewater is better than Sam Darnold. Like, I don't even think it's necessarily an upgrade for these guys. So he has some familiarity with Robbie. I'll tell you this, though. The most familiar thing they had was, Darnold missing Robbie on deep balls down the field. So it's a shame, man, because I see DJ Moore still going as like a top 20 receiver. And man, if you just want to look at efficiency numbers, that dude's like top 10 since he came into the league. A lot of PFF, yards per route run type metrics. I just think, we're giving this guy look. I hate Adam Gase as much as the next guy, but just realize, people, like Sam Darnold, we don't see these examples of quarterbacks not making it with their first team and going elsewhere. Like, even Tannehill was good enough in Miami to stay there for 6 or 7 years. If you look at the quarterbacks since 2010, first-round quarterbacks that have, just not managed. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. It was first-round quarterbacks that didn't play at least 5 years with their team. And let's see. The best one was Sam Bradford, which basically tells you all you need to know. But, yeah, Josh Rosen, Paxton Lynch, Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, Blake Bortles, Johnny Manziel, Teddy Bridgewater, EJ Manuel, RG3, Brandon Weeden, Jake Locker, Blaine Gabbert, Christian Ponder, Tim Tebow, Sam Bradford. The new qualifiers: Haskins, Darnold, Trubisky, Goff, and Wentz. Maybe they bucked the trend, but it's not good company.
No, it's not. And what was it, 2 years ago? Maybe there was a run of games at the end where Sam Darnold might have showed you his ceiling, and maybe we're all relying on those section of games at the end, plus his high draft selection, and we're holding out for a 4-year-old, something like that. But there's not a ton of evidence to say we should get excited.
The only what I would say is just looking at what the offensive coordinators could do for a quarterback compared to, I do understand, like, you can't blame everything on Adam Gase, but you certainly can blame a lot on Adam Gase, because he was the one that was coming out saying, hey, I really didn't develop Sam Darnold. Like, I didn't give him the best game plans. And it's like, now he's going to an offensive, an offensive minded coach that's like, hey, I know how to scheme open players. I know how to let you progress through your reads. Cause that was one of the big ones, is that, like, Darnold doesn't progress through his reads. He stares down as wide receiver. And, you can't do that and be a successful quarterback. But I just think that I have seen so many players from Adam Gase that everyone just wrote off. Everyone wrote off. And then they go to another team and they are significantly better. And so am I saying he's going to be a world beater quarterback? Absolutely not. I don't think he's going to be. But do I think that people are going to watch him and be like, wow, he's way better than I thought he was? And I think that's what you're going to see.
I just have like, it's so hard for me to project or look at Carolina. They were like, I think 24th in scoring last year, but then also like had 3 wide receivers that had 1,000 yards. So you're like, what am I going to get from them? Like, am I going to get enough fantasy relevant players, or am I going to get a super stinker offense with, Sam Darnold, hashtag Sam Darnold revival or something, like, I don't think any of it's just hard. And like, I would rather bet on, to Ian's point, maybe talent, and DJ Moore. Like at first I was like on Robbie Anderson, the shower narrative, but as Ian's pointed out, like, were they even really that good together? Robbie did have a great year last year in this system. That's nice. But, you bring in a guy like Terrace Marshall, who also knows the system too. It's a weird offense, I guess, is what I'm getting at. I have no idea how to project it.
I also like, I do like the fact that DJ Moore, I think that him going to the slot, and what we do know about Sam Darnold is he does target his slot more than anything. And I think that that's why DJ Moore is going to be a guy that if you target in your drafts, especially in a PPR, I do think that he will return his value.
That's what didn't make any sense last year, because we all thought Robbie was going to be the field stretcher and DJ would be the yak artist. And I mean, I think both those guys can do everything you want a wide receiver to do. I mean, I don't think either of them, are these one-trick ponies. And same goes for Curtis Samuel. The idea that Curtis was miscast as a field stretcher in 2019, like, get out of here. Kyle Allen was miscast as a professional quarterback. That was the problem.
Yeah.
So with DJ and Robbie, like, I think they'll be fine, but. We got Terrace Marshall there. We got the most target-fed running back, Christian McCaffrey, coming back into the offense. And now we got life with a new quarterback who has been nothing short of horrendous in any stat you want to look at since he got in the league. So, I mean, hey, he's free. It's a value. But when I look at all these wide receivers that are, we're talking about the Steelers, like maybe Ben should be higher because of how high priced everyone else is. It's the opposite in Carolina, because I'm like, okay, Darnold's this low. Like, we think he's going to enable all these receivers in the same way? I really don't.
So we're coming here to the second half of the last round of our mock draft here. It's been a fantastic mock draft here with Whisper Nation, Ian, Johnny, Travis, the whole gang. Once we get to the end of our mock drafts, we're going to do our infamous mock grades. I'm not sure what we're calling these days, but we'll go ahead, and we've got 9 different folks. We've got 4 of us here to give them a quick breakdown. Why don't we go ahead and we'll do 3. I'll just sit this one out and run it there, and we'll just do 3. Each one of us go ahead and break down one of Whisper Nation's teams, each 3 a pop. Let us know who you think did the best of those 3 that you evaluate, and then we'll let Whisper Nation decide who of those. So we'll have 3 then winners selected by each one of our panelists here, and then Whisper Nation, you let us know who the winner of those 3 semifinalists are on this one. So we're coming down right, and we went with. Oh, I thought you took Hooper. You went with Everett. That's a smarter pick. We talked about
buddy. Double-digit touchies this year could happen. It could happen if they just say you're our starting tight end, Gerald. Go out there and ball. I think he could do it. I think he's that good. Him and Higbee were splitting it up last year. The problem is he actually going to be the number 1, or is it going to be another annoying 3-way committee? What?
Is Big Montana still in Seattle?
You might be right. We got Will Disler there. That's the big problem. Is he Big Montana? Who is that? Okay, that's right. I like that nickname. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
The Ballers came up with that one. I do think Everett's got the ties to Shane Waldron, which is really nice. So he should at least, be a guy that can compete for that starting job. I have been afraid of like the way Seattle has used tight ends before, but we saw Jimmy Graham there, even maybe a close to dusted Jimmy Graham, like posting numbers with Seattle. So.
In fact, didn't Jimmy Graham get like something like 8 or 10 touchdowns that season?
Yeah, that's what he was saying. He got 10. And I think, that's, Russ and Deshaun Watson, I feel like, if you just give those guys one tight end, like the dude's going to score 10 plus touchdowns. It's just been a problem in both those systems with, multiple tight ends. If your real life team has, 2 consistently used tight ends, you probably have 0 fantasy relevant ones. Every now and then we see, Gronk and Hernandez, Ertz and Goddard a little bit, those are literally the only 2 examples of a team enabling 2 top 12 tight ends over the past, 10 or 11 years. So we just don't really see these offenses where, okay, the tight ends, already not getting as much target share usually as the wide receivers, maybe even the running backs. So if you're taking away their snaps, then things get awfully difficult in a hurry.
Fair points. All right, boys. Well, we got another one in the bag. Mock Draft Monday. Here we go. Love it. Thank you all for sticking around, Whisper Nation. If you're at this point and you haven't hit that thumbs up, do us a favor. Just go ahead and tap that thumbs up. Allows us to continue doing what we love so much. But on to now the draft grades. We've got 9 other members here that's 12 minus 3. So we got 9. We'll go ahead and start it off here with Big Travie. Travie, do you want to get us started here with NYG Noah, Cast Pajamas, and Pizza Belly to get us started?
I'll take a look. The biggest thing in Superflex I'm trying to look at is your quarterbacks, obviously. And, that 1-1 consistently tries to get Pat Mahomes, obviously, and stack those quarterbacks. This one is tough. But I actually might like Pizza Belly's quarterbacks. You know what? Actually, I'm going to give the 1-1 on quarterbacks because I do think Pat Mahomes, Trevor Lawrence should at least volume-wise continue to progress or continue to have good volume this year. Just that defense is not anywhere near it, and he should be the phenom. So you like the weapons around him, his ability to get it going. The running back position, I don't have any qualms here. I thought for a team that went QB and wide receiver heavy in the beginning, he ended up with Chris Carson, who's always disrespected, obviously runs violent. There's risk there, but going to be just a volume monster. Javonte Williams, look, the tape that we've witnessed, we like that a lot. He just looks like an Alvin Kamara light as far as breaking tackles. I really like what I see out of Javonte Williams. TJ Hawkinson, when I'm just looking at these 3 teams, I don't see a lot of misses here for NYG Noah.
Those 3 teams, NYG Noah, Cast Pajamas.
Yeah, right? I just don't see him having a lot of misses. I think he might take this here. I like Cat's Pajamas team. I don't like his quarterback. So everything but the quarterbacks, I'm just not in on in this Superflex, relying on Tua and then Zach Wilson to be your guys. And then Ian's favorite guy, Sam Darnold here, probably not going to do it for you. Pizza Belly would be okay. He was complaining in the sleeper chat that he was sniped a lot, and you can kind of tell with picks like Josh Jacobs there. He's got Mostert a little bit later on. Melvin Gordon, who we talked about not being an ideal pick. I am going to give the nod here to NYG Noah. I just like his team a whole lot more from top to bottom.
All right, NYG Noah with the first selection on to the next round for this week's tournament, which means everything. Ian, if you want to go ahead and give us your take on the next 3 there being Draft Hustle, Jay Blizzy, and The News. Between those 3, which team are you anointing as the champ?
Yeah, I was looking at him. Draft Hustle, I think, having Chark Hollywood Gage as your wide receiver 2 through 4. I don't love that. I know they have to make some sacrifices to get their quarterbacks, but I'm a little bit down on Andrews. I'm just kind of been avoiding that, Pitts, Andrews range of the draft. They just all seem a little bit overpriced. I'm more down to get some of the later tight ends, but we tell ourselves a story every year that there's more tight ends that are going to be fantasy relevant than there really are, and Andrews sure knows a thing or two about scoring touchdowns. So I love the Darrell Henderson pick at the end. What are you doing with Zach Ertz, though? Come on, we have no idea what's going on there. We've had the Buffalo trade rumors every single week for the last year, it seems like, and his just numbers were horrendous last year. It was AJ Green bad in terms of him just falling off a cliff. I know he was a little banged up, but my goodness. So I just think there was better picks down there. Jay Bleezy, getting Lamar as the QB4 is freaking awesome. Love Akers, Jefferson. Yeah, this one's looking pretty strong. Getting Mike Davis where he did is absolutely fine. I thought he actually fell a little bit. He's normally in that RB dead zone, but I still have him RB, 23, 24. I think he got him closer to that 30 range. So good stuff there. I don't think, really needed Cam at that point. I just think Mac Jones is going to win that job before too long. But hey, if it does end up being Cam, better weapons all around. If they keep using him as crazy enough as they do on the goal line, he'll pay back. James Conner, I liked how I went Jamal Williams. We had James Conner and Darrell Henderson. In my mind, those are 3 of the best, late round running backs you can get. Because James Conner, man, I was writing up this Cardinals backfield. He's been one of the best goal line backs in the league since he came in. Chase Edmonds has 1 career carry inside the 5. So usually. Yeah, only 1. Usually the Russian quarterbacks aren't great for these types of players, but last year, Drake, Kenyon Drake, Ezekiel Elliott, and Dalvin Cook, I believe, maybe Derrick Henry's in there. But there are only 3 guys that had at least 20 carries inside the 5-yard line. Kenyon Drake was one of them, and now Connor is getting that role. So I really like that pick. I would have to give the crown, though, I think, to The News. I like his squad. going Kamara Taylor 1-2, you know, was letting everyone else get the quarterbacks, and he comes away with two of the better, you know, running backs obviously you can get. And then to get Tannehill, Fields, and then basically what I did with my team, he kind of did as well, where, you know, you get Fields, I had Trey Lance, and it's like, okay, let's just get an undervalued quarterback later that can start while these rookies are, you know, are waiting to go. And I think Ryan Fitzpatrick, you know, is probably the best late round quarterback available in terms of, you know, what he's been able to do the last 3 years. He's been nothing except a QB1 when he's been out there. There's no reason not to expect him to be out there. And this, you know, maybe loaded's a strong word, but man, there's a lot of people to throw to in that Washington offense. They're not the Chiefs, but they're looking pretty good. Higgins, Sutton, Keenan, you know, 3 for 3, love that. Maybe a little high on Bateman, but I do know some smart people that really like him, and, you know, it's your guy, so whatever, go get it. Trey Sermon, round 10, more than fine with that. You know, on underdog, he's going like starting to creep into like the mid-20s and among the RBs, which I think is a little hefty. Talked about Debo earlier. Tunyon. Yeah, I mean, I know people are expecting Tunyon to regress, and he will. If Aaron Rodgers comes back, okay, this guy just tied with Logan Thomas for being the – yeah, there we go. When? I agree. So, you know, this guy just tied with Logan Thomas for being the overall tight end 3, and to get him where you did, good stuff. And Kenny Gainwell, you know, he's fine, 0 RB. And Elijah Moore, if there is someone to draft from the Jets, either him or Corey Davis. So I would give the edge to the news out of that group.
Right on. Great breakdown. Love the way you spelled that out here for us. Whisper Nation, Big Johnny, you want to go ahead and take us home here with Don Flick, T. Chris Boss, and BroCal38.
Yeah, so I was looking at these 3 guys, and I think I mean, I do like some of the moves and how these, you know, like BroCal38. I like how he played out his draft. You know, he did something. He went a little bit different direction. I still think he took Pitts a little bit too high, but like I think that he ended up kind of maneuvering okay. I like the receivers that he got. I think that's a good stack, kind of thin at running back here, but I think I got to give it to Don Flick overall for this section, because he went Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, and then he got DK, Mike Evans, OBJ as his like big 3 wide receivers. He's also got Antonio Gibson and Kenyon Drake as well. Both of those guys are going to get a lot of pass catching, and we're really high on Antonio Gibson as well. Grabbing Baker Mayfield, we've talked about Baker and how we do like him this year. Danny Dimes, I actually do think that Kenny G is going to get him a little bit better. I think he's going to be, you know, a top 12 quarterback, top 15, probably not. He's right on that back end of that fringe for me, but I do think he'll have some really nice games with high upside because of the rushing ability he has. That's like low key. I really like what he did with this team. I think that, and then I do want to point out Mike Gesicki, grabbing Mike Gesicki here. I know that Mike Gesicki disappointed a lot of people last year, including myself, because I was really high on Mike Gesicki. But I do want to point out that down the stretch when Tua came in, first off, we're finding out now, or at least over the last couple of weeks, that Tua had no idea what he was doing last year as far as play calling. He literally had so much trouble with the playbook, and that was kind of why he was hesitant to go, or he didn't necessarily or not want to go in the game, but he was reluctant to, because they had the whole plan was to sit him, right, and then they kind of threw him in and he wasn't ready. And so he admitted that he would go with plays even if he knew they wouldn't work, because he was just going to try to make it work. And I think that that's why you saw some really ugliness in there, but also pointing out that Mike Gesicki, a whole long story, was for Mike Gesicki down the stretch. He had 3 top 10 finishes at the tight end position, including 2 top 5 at the position. And so I do think that Mike Gesicki is actually kind of a post-hype sleeper that you'll be able to get, and he'll be a solid tight end for you.
700 yards and 6 touchdowns for a 25-year-old.
Yeah.
They just drafted his replacement at number 6 overall, though, people. Jalen Waddle's the new slot receiver.
Sure, but that will also help move Mike Gesicki in closer to the line, so he can actually take advantage of the mismatches. And unlike last year, where he was going against corners and who could keep up with them.
Hope he can block good enough to get that role. We'll see. He
doesn't block. He does. That is the thing. He does not block. That is why they have their backup tight end in there. Slythe, is that his? Sorry, I forget.
Smythe, yeah.
Smythe. That's what it is. Smythe. I knew it was something like that. But I do think Mike Gesicki, he's an athletic freak. He's one of the best, most gifted tight ends that has come out of college in the last 5 years, I think. Most people forget.
Freak, something that is said about me all the time. Pretty
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
So yeah, I give it to on this one. That's or my team for this.
Donflict, the news, and Trav, you went with
NYG Noah, yeah.
Right. Okay, Whisper Nation. It's been a phenomenal afternoon drafting alongside of you. If you wanted to be a part of this mock draft and you didn't get a chance to be a part of this sleeper room, make sure you've joined the Discord chat where we are releasing all of our information early. You can also catch that link coming your way on Twitter. So make sure you follow the Fantasy Whispers on Twitter to be a part of our live mock drafts every Monday, starting right around 12:05 Pacific time. But you got to let us know in the chat or on the Instagram page when Johnny gets this one up who won there out of NYG Noah, the news, and Donflict. We're relying on you here. But I'm Austin Sear. That's Johnny Game Time Hicks. We got Big Travie. Again, thank you so much, Ian, for joining us on the show today. It's been an absolute treat to get to pick your brain on some of these items. Anything that you want to share with? We talked about PFF, following you alongside on Twitter. Catch your daily fantasy pods coming your way. Anything you want to share out to Whisper Nation?
All good. Great day to be great. Thanks for having me, guys. Hope everyone continues to enjoy the summer.
Much appreciated.
All right, there's Johnny Game Time Hicks. That's Big Travie. There's Ian. There it is.
Peace.
Peace.
Right here.
Oh, hey, you made it to the end of the video. If you like what you saw and you want to learn how to dominate your own draft and win your own league, head on over to thefantasywhispers.com and grab your copy of the Fantasy Whispers Draft Kit today, or click the link in the description below. And if you're still not sold, check out one of these videos.